Hi there, welcome back. In today's video I'm going to analyze a fantastic battle between two strong Russian grandmasters and a battle that took place in the Closed Sicilian. Yes, in my previous video I recommended the Closed Sicilian for beginners. At the beginning level, I think you need to practice a lot of situations, and having a straightforward way of bringing your pieces to the game is something that I consider optimal. Okay, without further ado, let's jump right into the game. A game played by Artemiev, Vladislav Artemiev, against Daniil Dubov. Yeah, this was an over-the-board game played in the Russian Team Championship in 2018. Okay, so let's start. E4, C5, Knight C3. This is a Closed Sicilian. Yeah, for those of you who haven't seen the video devoted to it, I highly recommend it. You do it. Okay, Knight C6, G3. This is the normal development in the Closed Sicilian. White fianchettos its bishop to control key squares E4, D5, and to get an easy development. Now G6, black is doing the same, controlling D4, bishop G2, bishop G7, D3, opening the diagonal for the dark square bishop, defending E4, everything pretty normal, D6, and now bishop E3. Yeah, this is my recommendation, but also F4 is quite interesting. Well, bishop E3 prepares queen D2 and long castle, and is pretty effective in case of E6. E6, queen D2, knight G7, bishop H6, and white is ready to play castle and H4, H5. And this is pretty nice to play. But in case of E5, things are a bit different, and white usually changes the idea. Now F4 is the most normal move, but in the game, Artemiev played knight H3, a mysterious move that prepares F4, and he will be happy to recapture with the knights. So the game continued with knight G7, castle, castle, and F4. Here we are. And white is ready to play something like G4 and F5 with a pawn storm in the king side, an idea we already seen in the previous video. And after e takes F4, he's happy to recapture with the knight, increasing the control of D5. Yeah, everything seems to be pretty normal and pretty nice for white. The semi-open F file is also of some consideration. So now Dubov played the sharp B5. Yeah, he wants to get the initiative and apparently sacrifices the B pawn. Artemiev plays A3. Accepting the pawn is not such a good idea, as after rook B8, knight C3, rook takes B2, black's activity is evident, so it's not a good idea. The bishop is hitting and the rook is pretty active. So instead, by playing A3, is difficulting B4, and is inducing A5. Yeah, A5 with the idea of playing B4, it's met by knight takes B5, and rook B8 is simply answered by A4. Yeah, and bishop takes B2, rook B1, bishop E5, C3, and the knight is pretty well placed and D4 is coming. So this seems pretty good. So after A3, the game continues with B4, A takes B4, C takes B4, and we reach the first critical moment of the game. Yeah, black is using the strength of his dark square bishop to put pressure on white's position. Now we have to decide where to place the knight. Yeah, normally we want to place it on D5. Yeah, but then B2 would be hanging. Black would be able to play bishop takes B2. Otherwise, if we want to defend B2, knight A4 would be a normal move, but an ugly one to make because our knight would be misplaced. B6 is not available, C5 is not available, C3 is not available, so the knight on A4 is really bad place. Okay, he played knight C D5. Yeah, that's the right one. Bishop takes B2. White has a fantastic idea And I challenge you to find it. What would you play as white? Yeah, we're a pawn down. So the most normal move would be to play rook b1, trying to recover the pawn. But actually, there's a fantastic idea played by Artemiev that took the game into a very interesting battle. Yeah, have you seen it? Can you imagine what's the best way to take advantage of black bishop being here, leaving a little bit undefended his king? Okay, probably by now you know that he played d4. Yeah, now the bishop is invited to capture the rook, but won't be able to go back to cover the dark squares in the castle, in black's castle. And so, as the bishop won't have any square, rook b1 is coming. Dubov accepted to take the rook, and knight f6, a fine point, as queen takes a1, would be pretty normal, but black can play knight takes d5, knight takes d5, and f6, and the knight cannot get to f6. So by playing knight f6 first, white is going to be able to keep this super strong piece on f6. Okay, in case you're wondering what happens with king g7 with the intention of attacking the knight on f6, it will be super risky for black to capture it, but it's interesting, it's an interesting situation. Queen takes a1 and king takes f6 is answered by d5, knight e5. You're thinking about knight h5, you're right, checkmate in one. Yeah, so knight f6 is answered by king h8, queen takes a1, and we reach the critical position because the forced moves are over, and white is an exchange and a pawn down, but strategically is very strong. Yeah, the knight on f6 and the possibility of this bishop to take part in the hunt of black's king will be really important. So white's pieces are pretty well placed, and it's tough to imagine black using its material to win the game. Okay, the move he played was queen a5. This is a pretty normal idea. Yeah, by trading queens, using the material advantage would be something much simpler. But of course, white is not ready to trade queens. Now, we have an interesting question. Where would you place the queen? There are several choices. Perhaps the most straightforward idea would be to try to bring the queen to h6 by playing queen c1. Yeah, at some moment, the queen may reach h6. But the problem with this move is that queen a3 attacks the queen, attacks the bishop, and is not nice, because then bishop a6 is coming, knight a5 is coming, and all of a sudden black pieces are really active. So instead, other interesting idea is to play queen e1 with the intention of playing g4 and queen h4. Yeah, this is a pretty decent idea, but it has a problem. Yeah, the problem is b3. Yeah, black insists in trading queens, and if we don't accept, then the pawn is reaching b2 or c2. And this is pretty dangerous. Okay, he came up with queen d1. Yeah, queen d1 has the idea of coming to f3, playing g4 and queen h3, and sometimes even queen g4 right away. Queen g4 can be achieved in case, for instance, of bishop a6, queen g4, bishop takes f1, queen h4 threatening queen takes h7, checkmate, h5, and bishop takes f1 with a very beautiful position in which white is ready to sacrifice, and once the pawn is on h5, play e5 to interfere the scope of the black queen. For instance, rook b8, knight for h5, g takes h5, and e5. Now queen h5 is unavoidable, and black can resign because of the weak situation of the king. King g7, queen g5, knight g6, and queen h6, checkmate. Queen d1 was answered by knight g8, trying to get rid of this powerful knight, but Artemiev brought his other knight to replace the knight on f6. The game continued with bishop e6, knight takes g8, rook takes d8. Whenever we have the bishop pair, there is one bishop that is the most important piece of the board, usually, and this is the unopposed bishop. Yeah, for instance, the bishop on g2 is controlled by the bishop on e6, whereas our dark square bishop is not stopped by any black piece. And this can be seen in this situation. What would you play? This is not a tough one. Yeah, the move was bishop g5. Yeah, Artemiev wants to place the bishop on f6, where he's going to display a fantastic activity and is going to dominate black's pieces. So, and especially bring a powerful attack. Now, rook g7. Yeah, black is ready to return some part of the material. He's ready to return the exchange. In case of rook fc8, I guess bishop f6, king g8, and queen c1 or queen d2, followed by queen h6, is super strong, and black would be under a severe attack. Yeah, so the idea of returning the exchange seems pretty normal, as he is going to be still pawn up. So after bishop f6, rook a g8. Okay, he says, whenever you want to trade, you can trade. Yeah, this rook is a little bit awkward. I'm not convinced that it's well placed there, but I guess he is preventing something like queen d2 and queen h6. So the rook is already well defended by this passive rook on g8. Okay, the game continued with knight e3. White is ready to play d5, and something that must be mentioned is the role of the dark square bishop. Yeah, it's such a strong piece, pinning the rook, and no black piece is able to trade it. So white is in no rush to capture on g7, and black prevented it by putting pressure on d4, e3, and g1. So this is a normal way to prevent d5. Queen d2, white insists in playing d5. Now the knight is already defended, and the game continued with knight a5. Yeah, this is a very important position, and yeah, the thing is that d5 still is not possible because of the pin. Yeah, this knight is pinned, and knight c4 would be super annoying, as we're going to lose some material. The queen is attacked, the knight is attacked. Instead, white has to find a way to increase the pressure. Artemiev tries to improve the situation of his king, and at the same time to gain some space in the king side by playing h4. Yeah, this is pretty normal. I guess that rook b1 would be also pretty normal move, trying to capture on b4. So the game continued with h4 and b3. Yeah, black is trying to get some activity, as otherwise he's just defending and expecting white to ring the power and destroy him. e3 is quite normal. The game continues with rook b1, pinning the pawn, and yeah, b2. Yeah, Dubov is trying to get some counterplay by advancing the passive pawn, and he's taking advantage, as usual, of the fact that d5 is answered with knight c4. And there are several ways to avoid it, but white's best move is c4. It not only avoids bishop a2, but also opens the second rank and is taking rook takes b2. And look at this bishop. Look the domination of this bishop. Yeah, this material imbalance is bringing white so much joy. The game continued with rook b8. Now the rook was required to protect the pawn. And king h2. Yeah, now white finally is ready to play d5. Queen b4, inviting Artemiev to an ending. But of course, we are not interested in getting into an ending. And he played queen f2. Keeping the pressure and getting ready to get to h6, and sometimes even to get to a7. The game continued with knight takes e4, knight takes e4, bishop takes e4. Finally, white is able to play d5. Yeah, the bishop is such a strong piece, not only pins the rook, but also attacks the pawn on b2, and there is no way to defend it. It's already attacked by 3 of our pieces and is going to fall. Queen b6 was played, and now surprisingly rook takes b2. Yeah, accepting to trade queens, yeah, but the thing is that queen takes f2 is not a trade of queens, but mate in one. So rook takes b2, bishop b3, and queen e1. Yeah, white is trying to reach c3, attacking the bishop and the rook. Queen b4, and there are several ways to play, but I like the fancy move Artemiev came up with. Can you discover it? Try to discover a fancy move, and you'll see how easily he won the game afterwards. Okay, he played queen a1. Fantastic move, creating pressure along the long diagonal, and this is unbearable for black. Now queen takes a7, and is threatening now queen takes f7, and the game continued with queen c4. Instead, rook f8 is simply answered by queen e3. There are several ways, but this one is a super strong. Rook b8 and e5. Yeah, the idea is to play e6, or sometimes to play e takes d6, and in case of d takes e5, queen takes e5, attacking this, and yeah, I guess d6, and the game is close to the end. The d pawn is going to decide, while this bishop is still pinned. So the game continued with queen c4, and after queen takes f7, Dubov decided to resign, as it's pretty tough to unpin and to do anything. It's almost impossible to move. For instance, bishop a4 is simply answered by queen takes g7, rook takes g7, rook b8, and checkmate in few moves. Queen c8, rook takes c8, bishop e8, rook takes e8, and the rook is picked. So the idea of this game is remarkable. The potential of this bishop gives plenty of ideas, and even if we are a lot of material down, the fianchetto structure without the bishop is super difficult to play. So that was it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you next time. Goodbye.